Oh, you're going to have to put up with me not doing anything useful for one more video, and then it's back to making bows. Because tomorrow and Sunday I've got days off, and the world has returned to somewhat normal in northern Michigami here, and so life is good. Yes, Chuck, we're staying warm, so no problems there. We've had power for a little while here. And gosh, I even rode my motorcycle to work yesterday. It was 30 degrees, which is warm enough. It was sunny, avoiding ice. Let me circle back to quote Raggedy Ann. I watch quite a few videos on all sorts of things, but one of our favorite subjects is like creepy stories. There's a channel called That Chapter. Look it up. The guy's name is Mike, and he blends horror with comedy, if you can believe that. And also, of course, Mr. Ballin. But I'm looking back at some of the things that I've done on videos, telling stories, and they were quite popular. I did Native American stories, various and sundry, and they did all right. So storytelling is a good thing. And I often think when I look at the numbers of views on my videos, I've been in this game for, I don't know, 10 years, something like that, probably more, making YouTube videos. And one could say that my viewership is pretty pathetic, but whatever. Doesn't bother me any. I'm not in this game to make money. But every so often I think, you know what? I could get the rocker panels on my Silverado fixed if I made more money on YouTube. And going the story route would be one way. People love stories. And I can do that. But for some reason, I've managed to pull defeat from the jaws of victories for this many years, and I might as well keep going. Do what you know. But I'm thinking about the motorcycle, riding it to work yesterday. One thing that I am very happy about is that I have probably a minute and a half commute to work. It's very short. That's one good thing about being a townie here, is that where I work is just up yonder. And if you're not a southerner, you probably don't realize this, but when you say over yonder, it's a vector. You have to point over yonder. I learned that from a southerner at tank school at Boise, Idaho, Gowan Field. It's over yonder. He said that's a vector. But where was I going with that? Anyway, the motorcycle story, riding it to work, and I'm aged. I'm pert near 64 years old, and so I'm more cautious with riding on ice. But I'm thinking back in the day, stories and expectations and this, that, and other thing and whatnot and etc. And someday I'll clue you into that inside joke. But I rode my dad's CX500 to class because I went to Jackson Community College at that point, and he was a math professor, very wise man, if you knew my dad, Bernie, and probably knew my Uncle Rod too. But that notwithstanding, as I rode his CX500 without permission to school, I'd just take his motorcycles, and ride them and actually abuse them and stuff. But I was young. And got out of class, and there had been an ice storm. Everything was glazed ice. Icy parking lot, icy roads, everything. And my dad and I were going back home at the same time. And I go, man, everything is covered with ice. I don't want to ride the motorcycle. And he's going, you rode it here, you ride it back home. And so I figured he'd just kind of be in front of me and I'd follow him slowly. And he just took off. He just took the freaking heck off. And I rode a little slower because I'm on a motorcycle on ice with road tires and no benefit of having, cleats for ice racing. And so he takes off and I make it back home. And I go, why'd you go so fast? There's a twist to the story. And he goes, well, I figured you would either make it or you'd crash and I'd see the ambulances going by the house. I thought, well, that's kind of a crummy attitude. But, now that I'm aged, passed through some years and understanding teaching your kids responsibility, it was all about, and I appreciate it now, you got yourself into it, you get yourself out. And, as a side note, if he actually thought I'd crash, looking back at it, I think he had a lot of respect for my skills. Hard won being an idiot, with a fast motorcycle. So looking back at it, I kind of treasure that response he had to me riding that motorcycle on sheet ice back home. Responsibility and respect. I didn't get that when I was younger. But as they say, and I'm kind of blending in the stories here, the older I got, the wiser I saw that my father was. Isn't that interesting? You know, I wish he was around because I would have more conversations about that. And I did, you know, in his later years. He passed a while ago. And interesting guy. Didn't pay too much attention to me, you know, when I was younger, but he said, you know, you weren't interesting as a kid. You got more interesting as you were older. You know, in all these things you look back and you wish that, you know, I said more. Kind of goes along with, you know, I really regret the things I didn't do, not the things I've done. Although there's plenty of things that I regret that I've done. Something to think about. Anyway, I'm just kind of puttering here. I got the new pull start assembly. You know, that's ridiculous. The cord broke on my generator. And I took off the assembly, you know, the spring and the rewind unit and all that stuff, thinking that I'm just going to disassemble it, put new cord on it. I've got cord here. And unlike every other machine that I've had, that's not rebuildable. So I spent $30 on a new assembly that was perfectly fine, except it needed a new pull cord. It's ridiculous. It's modern engineering. But yeah, I've got my generator working up, nice new oil in it. Cleaned it up, it's ready to go, and it's got gas in it. And it's right under yonder. I put it on a cart so I can roll it around instead of sliding it, wearing down the bottom of the frame every time I skid it across concrete. That's enough. You have a good one. Thank you for watching.